Yikes.
Welcome to your terrifying daily dose. I'm Robert Cookie Cochran, and that's Susan Scary Scarlet.
Scared and giggling.
What?
But there definitely is a history for you that I cannot comprehend. You may need to explain to me
Sure.
what the attraction is to horror anything.
Yeah. So the fundamental part for me is I think at about 12, I read my first Stephen King novel, which was Pet Cemetery. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
Nope, nope.
It is a terrifying tale of a doctor who the family cat gets run over, and they're living off kind of in the woods in this area, and he doesn't want to tell the kids the classic thing, and somebody, a local, tells him, go bury it in the pet cemetery. That's the right thing to do. And it's kind of a spooky place off in the woods, and he does that, and the next day the cat comes back, and it's alive, but it's not quite right. It's alive, just a little off. And you could probably see where this is going. Terrifyingly, his son gets hit by a car and dies. And his wife immediately says, take him to the pet cemetery. And little Gage, because they can't bear the thought of losing Gage. Little Gage comes back, but he's not quite right.
Robert. And what is it? I'm sure the writing was incredibly compelling, but oh my gosh. So what is it that keeps you there?
It teaches, I think, us about messing with what we're not supposed to, is the lesson, as it were, that, we talked about this. Doctors aren't gods, right? And death is a part of life, even when it happens in ways that we wish it wouldn't. And it's kind of the classic story of we're not supposed to reanimate. Life is precious, and we value it as long as we can. And when it's over, it's accepting the fact that it's over. So, yeah.
A good storyteller. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah. So, I mean, what horror does to me broadly, that was one example of it, but it does, I think it satisfyingly puts on display some of the things that are inside of our heads, whether they're nightmares or things we think about we didn't know other people thought about, that we get to say, me too, I've had that same fear, and puts them forward in an entertaining way because we're separated and yet still engaged with what's going on, and can really tell some very important stories too. Horror can. I think of Jordan Peele's first two works in Get Out and Us, where he takes on things like systemic racism, where he takes upon classism and tells them through the lens of horror. And, it elevates the conversation.
Yeah, I was thinking it exaggerates it, and there's a power in that, in
That's right.
exaggeration.
That exaggeration speaks somebody's truth who didn't have voice to give it that, or wouldn't be heard at that level. That's what art can do. It can elevate those things.
Well, we were talking about Gallows humor the other day too, that
Right.
I guess that comes from the same place, that there's a inverted way or just a different way of maybe perceiving or learning or being open to something that I think I've begun to discover this pattern in myself that's not something I'm proud of, but when there's something like this that I'm, retreating from, well, that's what I do. I just don't go there, like, so I haven't read any of Stephen King's books. Hello, he's like one of the most successful. So I didn't really even know what kind of lesson you could have possibly learned from that. And I think I'm figuring out that backing away is will not serve me well. It diving in, whether it's figuring out what it is about improv that affects quality of life, which seemed like just the silliest idea, that I didn't really need to do. Who would ever know it would completely change my life and I would become an official for his followers. So there's a stretching. I guess I'm saying we should all stretch, push our own boundaries out of our comfort zone, and it helps us learn.
The more you do that, Susan, I want to yes and you in such a big way. As a person with Parkinson's, the more you give permission to others to do that. And again, ways that they never would have thought possible. That's why your story is so important to me, to the community, because you had no interest in this in terms of the way I was applying it. And all of a sudden it's turned into, well, what it is.
Well, it wasn't in terms of the way you're applying it. That's what brought me in, was once I
Right,
figured that out.
right.
Yeah, once I listened, and as you said, you got to jump in to figure it out.
You followed the fear.
Indeed, I did.
And that is today's Daily Dose.